The mind opens, and in creeps wisdom. This was Laxana Troy. My response is, the heart opens, and in creeps love. We are Clever Orbits, and today we are discussing Such Sweet Sorrow from the Season 2 of Discovery. It is the penultimate episode, and I liked it. It was a lot of fun. And I think this maybe has a short circuit of moments of compassion, but at the same time, it adds some subtlety to a artificial intelligence that we've seen before on the show, have never talked about, or at least YouTube doesn't seem to think we've ever publicly talked about it, namely Zora from the episode Calypso, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. I've got with me, I'm Louis Brandmeier, in case somebody didn't know that. I've got with me Richard Futrell.
Hello.
Who we've recently decided is the equivalent of a hard left turn in a film plot.
A hard turn in some direction.
A hard turn in some direction. Perhaps a new direction, which is even scarier. And then, you should really watch all that Ross Jeffries stuff. I think you'd find it really hilarious and fascinating, just from a linguistic standpoint. And then we've also got, in a rare guest appearance, we've got Tyler Brandmeier.
Yeah, I have a name.
Wow, that's got to be the least interesting self-introduction we've heard from you, Dr. Brandmeier.
Oh,
no.
Glad you weren't expecting it.
I don't mean to insult you. Everything's going great with you back on the show. What was the cause of your long hiatus, sir? How are you?
Let's just go with TBD? No, that's future tense.
TB. You had tuberculosis. We'll go with that.
No, those are my
TBA,
initials. That's funny.
Your last name does not start with a D.
It's TD. No. Touchdown. No. It's TB,
right,
which people
so this episode,
there's one person at work who calls me TB. It says tuberculosis, and I call him irritable bowel because his initials are IB.
God bless you. Maybe we should have left you on the ship.
This is a Star Trek podcast today.
So
like
this episode.
And sometimes there's like someone who's like leaving a party and they're leaving and they just say goodbye to everyone and they go around and they keep on saying goodbye and they never really seem to leave and they just keep on saying goodbye and like hugging people and you kind of think maybe they should have just left. I kind of felt like this episode was just like really long goodbye to Michael Burnham and company. Them all just saying goodbye to each other and then saying, no, we're going to go together, and then other people. But Sonequa Martin Green is signed for the next season, right?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, so like it was hard to get a lot of pathos there.
I agree.
Well, it's empathizing with all the other characters is the point, I think. It's the experience of the other characters that's being reflected and appreciated and acknowledged. And I thought that it was really well done. In fact, I wept like a baby through most of this episode. And here's why. Here's how that works. There's a phenomenon known as the parasocial relationship. Parasocial, which is basically when somebody empathizes very deeply with a character or a celebrity with whom they don't have any direct interaction. And my theory, so this really gnawed at me. I was just very curious, and I was like, what's going on with this? Like, why do I feel so much for these characters? And generally I feel a lot for these characters and for people. But this episode, it just stood out as readily apparent to me that, like, there's something going on here. And so my theory about myself, which I might not have shared on this podcast before, but the idea is that I, as an Aspie, or as a person who has autism, Asperger's syndrome specifically, that I was born with a greater capacity for empathy than what are called neurotypicals, like yourselves. That at some point I repressed them, or I repressed that capacity. And my theory, again, about myself is that since I was very young, being able to watch fictional characters was a safe place to open up my capacity for empathy and experience the intense depth of empathy that is there without consequence or without significant serious danger of pain or implication in someone else's emotional life, or I don't even know. So that's my theory going on behind the scenes. However, all of that said, in order for that to come out as a false positive for me, in order for me to find those systems engaged in my brain with someone, that has to be a pretty robust representation of personhood or personality or embodied activity. And like, I'm pretty sure that it's the characterization of these characters. Like, if they could cause a false positive in someone like myself or in someone in general, and a lot of the complaints in the reviews that I saw was like, oh, this is sappy and sentimental and there's too much tears and all the tears. And like, I'm here to say that this is what Star Trek is about. We've said this for many episodes, that it's about empathy. It's about moments of compassion. It's about us noticing that there's an epic depth and richness to the characters and the persons around us. And here, it's subtly implied and appreciated without being belabored, especially for, like the supporting cast with their little letters. And the central message of the episode is we are here to be with each other, to be for each other, and to serve. And it's so simple and clear and beautiful and elegant and expressed with like wildly joyful precision. They, in fact, go deep into the practice of generous, loving, heart-centered acknowledgement, which is something by which I live my life. They took all of the layers of the gloves off for Burnham, and she basically told the entire bridge crew, hey, I love you all. Exactly what she said. And so my experience of this episode was as a crescendo of this iteration of Star Trek's incarnation and integration of emotional intelligence and sensitivity. Whereas other Treks maybe didn't wear this on their sleeve, or maybe borderline repressed, suppressed, ignored, bracketed out this facet of human existence, or consigned it to the sidelines where it was someone like Seven of Nine or Spock or even the Doctor who was wrestling with what it means to have emotions and be a human. Like for this one, Burnham, I would venture to say, becomes an incarnation of an expression of the modern sensibility in the world. Post-structuralism, post-modernism. Everything's relative. All we have is our personal feelings, right? I think that's a quote from Star Trek Nemesis. All I have are my personal feelings, Shinzon says. Well, yeah, and those are important. Those motivate us. Those cause us to unite in community with others. And to notice others through facial expression, tone of voice, body language, and to take actions. And, so in the postmodern world, there's no clarity about values or ideas and what the structure of our beliefs about reality should be. But we do retain feelings. And so, like, for Burnham, she's got the echoes of rationalist thinking. She's got the echoes of, like, structural linearity from her Vulcan-ness or her Vulcan upbringing, and she's struggling to, from within that, understand what it means to have these emotions. And you see this all the way back to the 6th episode of season 1, where she's just kind of like, she's struggling. She's like, I don't really know how to handle this feeling that I have for Ash Tyler. And so here, Pike's comment to Burnham about her heart seems to be the titular and central theme of the show. is that most people never get a chance to learn what's in their own hearts. And I am grateful to have been here to watch you, pun probably wildly and heavily intended, discover your own hearts. I'd say that's the truest discovery of the whole show, is the importance and the depth and the intensity of the love that is within her own heart, and as a stand-in for all of us in our engagement with the world from compassion. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and take credit for this as being the final place that the plot and the characters ended up, in that I was the one to get up at STLV. And I mean, this is not a direct, this is more like a correlation. This is not a causation thing, but I'd like to think that I played a part in this, telling Shaniqua Martin Green, hey, crying in front of her, hey, one of my best friends and I watched the show, and that kept him alive. Like the impact that your show is making on real hearts and minds is the core of what this Star Trek thing is. And you'll notice that the season has had a lot of heart-centered moments, has had more, actually. And I know that they already filmed half of this season when I got up to speak to her last year, but they added an episode so that they could split this finale into 2 episodes. So anyway, that's kind of a legend, right? I'm not going to assert that with the strength of credibility that I'm going to talk about Zora or Control, but so it's about compassion. It's about the interrelationships between the characters. It's about them appreciating one another and wearing their heart on their sleeve, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and that is the lifeblood of what it means to be human. So that's kind of my opening salvo. Haven't had one in a while. What do you guys think?
I'm glad it touched you. I kind of feel like many episodes so far have basically consisted of Michael Burnham's going to sacrifice herself or do something in some way, and everyone is tearful about it and saying, I love you, and giving rousing speeches about sacrifice and you're a great crew, and it all feels like it's building to the actual sacrifice hasn't happened yet. It's like we're just building up to this sacrifice emotionally, or some actual event. And I guess we're going to get it next time.
I really hope that the payoff is they all, with Discovery, are completely cut off from Starfleet, from their own time, from their families, and forced to stick together as a crew that can literally never go back. Except,
Spock has to make it back, and Pike.
Well, Spock, you see from the trailer, he ends up at the shuttle, so he's not he's not with them when they go to the future. So I really want to see them go into and stay in the future. However, one of the cool things about this episode is every short Trek so far, pretty much, has played its part in the series, except for the Harry Mudd one, which somebody online suggested that the way that the Harry Mudd one will work is they'll call on his help, and an army of androids will help to hit Section 31.
No, that would be unacceptable. That would be unacceptable.
Yeah, because that means he wins. That's yet another
result
of him winning.
Television.
Yeah, as we recall from our review of that episode, that was one of the most horrific Star Trek episodes ever to be displayed, because evil wins. Evil wins. And it's
they can't warp past the nebula just yet.
Exactly. So I do think that this season is fast approaching Riker's beard status. Do you guys know what Riker's beard is?
I do, but maybe our listeners don't.
Riker's beard is a TV trope for when a show has done the opposite of jumping the shark. It's matured, and it understands itself well enough to be doing something interesting and reliably. So yeah. The 3 things I think we should orbit are the AI. We've already done the compassion, and then there's also maybe the Enterprise, maybe the role we're meant to play, quote unquote, as per Pike. That whole conversation has returned finally. That conversation of fate and free will, faith versus science. Yeah. What did you guys think, Richard? Well, let's start with you. So I heard your everybody going around at a party and it being boring, and maybe the season having a little bit too much sentimentality.
I just feel like we've been getting this, Michael Burnham crying basically and saying "I love you" for many episodes now.
Her and Stamets, their faces when they're experiencing intense emotions make this show completely worthwhile.
They just said
just by
I want you to display extreme emotion on your face for 3 hours. We're just going to film that, and we're going to splice it up. And that's going to be several episodes.
I agree, Bird.
So speaking of Captain Pike, no one was in fact speaking of Captain Pike. Speaking of Captain Pike, I loved how happy he was to be back on the Enterprise, and in fact, his acknowledgments were appreciated. And I'm going to go ahead and this is I'm going to do this. I think he's my favorite captain. There's literally nothing not to absolutely love about him. He's not played by an actor who's an asshole in real life.
Still sore about that?
He's what? No, I'm not actually sore. I'm just making fun. I know that I've come to accept and love that he is how he is, and that's okay, William Shatner. I actually really appreciate his work and what he's done. So, there's nothing wrong there. But, no, Pike might be the greatest captain in Star Trek. And here's my argument around that. He's able to walk in the gray area like Sisko was, though he hasn't been confronted with terribly difficult situations in that realm yet. He is a great shepherd, like Janeway was. He's balanced, like Picard. He's got a great sense of humor. He's fun, like Kirk was. He's interesting. He's got a tragic nobility that no other Starfleet captain has. In that he not only sacrifices himself for other people, but he has to live with the knowledge that the life that he's choosing and the values that he's honoring day in and day out over time will force him to sacrifice his life. So it's like an unending sacrifice. Like he could, I guess he can't retreat anymore, right? Based on that very metal conversation he had. So metal. With the time travel crystal protecting Klingon. And, he's also full of this, wonder and enthusiasm and fun, like Archer was. So I'd like to say that he is quite possibly the greatest captain. And he definitely was the opposite of Lorca, too. So when the writers were creating this character, they were like, what is everything good and reliable and healthy and beautiful and amazing and great that a Starfleet captain is and should be? Let's pump this character full of that. Because people were really miffed that Lorca ended up being such a bad character. And then also Georgiou, right? Georgiou, in her current state, she's kind of drifting towards being vaguely good. I always thought that she was going to be the one to head up Section 31 and that's why it ends up bad, because Leland was only borderline bad. But
still could happen.
It still could happen, but she's got to find her way back. I don't know. Maybe she leaves the ship as well before it leaves for the future, so that she can join Ash Tyler to do that nebulous something. Which what he was telling Pike? He was basically telling Pike, Captain Pike, I don't know how to tell you this, but I need to go star in my own spinoff. There's something I have to do. It's being in a spinoff.
One of those difficult conversations.
It's one of those really
Every captain eventually has to have that conversation with a subordinate.
Well, actually, so I sent you guys this. There's a petition to have a series with number 1, Spock and Pike on the Enterprise. Of course, the very last episode of that show has to be this downgrading of the bridge due to budgetary concerns in Starfleet.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. So
let's talk about the bridge of the Enterprise.
If it's true that Control has infiltrated all the technology, they're going to have to do some downgrading to get rid of Control, right?
Oh, my.
That's how it's going to work. They're going to be like this big view screen it's got too much software in it that's infected with control. So we need to downsize it to a little rectangle.
Can't see heart rates anymore.
That's right.
I mean, maybe. That's a better theory than the... we come up with a theory like this every season.
It's going to be a motif.
We live in hope. But Richard, I think it's pretty clear, especially based on the interviews with the production designer for the Enterprise Bridge, that there's no hope anymore. Like, visually speaking, Discovery is not ever going to be reconcilable with what we know from canon.
It's kind of like, I kind of feel like they just couldn't help themselves. Like, you have one rule: don't go on the Enterprise Bridge, because you can't reconcile it if you do. And they just couldn't stop themselves from doing that.
Too late.
You can there's you can imagine
it was
there's
beautiful.
Camp for production designers. Oh, I did like it. It was
between Abrams and original.
Part of me that was like, be canonical. Then it was really cool looking.
Yeah, I kind of like the bridge. I sort of even forgot that Discovery had thrown its own edict out the window. There's a reason everything looks different, and, it's because you've chosen not to commit to that appearance at all, which, who knows? Hit or miss. I
think it's all right. I think what happened is fine. I'm entertained by that bridge. It's fun. It's beautiful. It looks enough like the original one. I'll just let go. I mean, we've floated the unreliable narrator kind of theory before as well.
Yeah. The theories are like unreliable narrator, economic collapse, and expurgation of control.
Extirpation
and horrific accident, and horrific accident also.
I like horrific accident, actually.
Yeah, me too.
Ooh, dilithium reserves dangerously low. Maybe that happens. Maybe something happens to the Queen's planet.
Oh, yeah. The Queen is going with them into the future, interestingly. How do we...
Yeah, so the Queen is really into eating... she's really into eating sugar. But she looks quite healthy. So what's going on?
Different metabolism.
Different metabolism, I guess. She hasn't gotten the news about sugar.
She will. Don't worry.
I guess she is young.
Well, so the role we're meant to play. Let's talk about that. Like, what do you think? It's Burnham. Burnham has basically, she's like masterminded her whole life.
Maybe not her whole life. So I guess it's pretty much confirmed now that, the Red Angel Mark II is in fact Michael Burnham. And Michael Burnham's mother was just like some kind of pre-Red Angel that may or may not have been really the relevant one. And she's setting the beacon. I don't know. She can't have planned her whole life. That would be kind of too neat,
Yeah.
It'd also be
if she had planned her whole life, and you want to make like a 7-season TV show, then it's going to get kind of be a drag at some point, because it's going to be like, okay, what did I plan?
Well, not her whole life, right?
Yeah.
She goes to the future with the rest of the Discovery crew, and then they have adventures there. Which, by the way, when we talk about Zora, it's not clear where the Discovery is in the future. We believe it's in the far future, based on the writer's comments about Vidraish being a mess up of Federation Vidraish. So, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wait,
the whole
explain?
idea is that it's set in the far future where that's been kind of corrupted linguistically.
Okay.
However, we don't know how far it is in the future.
Vidraish. Federation Vidraish.
Vidraish.
I just gave Richard the thing that he's going to love for the rest of this week.
The person who coined it was choking on blood. Very nice.
The what?
I like that.
Who was choking on blood?
The person who coined Vidraish.
Yeah. Someone was trying to say Federation, but they were suffering from tuberculosis and coughing up blood, and they said Drish. And then someone else was like, let's just call it that.
They were just or lazy. So, yeah, I mean, here's the other thing. The crew, after talking all season about faith versus science, they basically used the intelligent design argument about the signals. And even Spock agrees.
Well, you know, it's if you know there is an intelligent entity in the future, then it goes through.
Yeah, I think so. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think that Tyler's going to stay behind, not our Tyler, of course, and he's going to spearhead the effort to clean up the mess that Section 31 has become, because literally every ship of Section 31 is part of this fleet, and I really don't think that every ship is going to be destroyed in this upcoming battle. I think regardless of where Discovery goes and the Spear data goes, there's going to be ships left from Section 31, and they've got all the resources of Section 31. In fact, Section 31's got future tech. Like, Section 31 is like 50 to 100 years ahead of the rest of the Federation in terms of technology. So we could have a whole series of, Ash Tyler. I mean, I'd be really disappointed if they found some way to kill off Control after a half season of it gaining wind and power, and then just going into the future to prevent it from getting even more powerful. Because it's really powerful right now. 30 ships. 30 ships. That's as many as we're at, or close to as many as we're at Wolf 359 to fight the Borg. That's a huge fleet. So they destroy some of those ships, possibly. The Enterprise and Discovery do. And then, how does Control get resolved? Well, Tyler goes and deals with that. And that's the series. And Section 31 becomes, I don't know, even more rigorous in its skeptical, terror around potential threats because of how deeply and painfully it was infected itself with a threat like this. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I hope that the next season's all about Ash Tyler, trying to deal with the bureaucratic incentives inside Section 31 that led to this kind of problem, and making sure everyone's incentives are aligned, and having meetings and trying to flush out people that may be a little bit corrupt. I think that's what I want to see.
And then the great failure of that series eventually would have to be that Georgiou comes back, and her moral argument that, hey, we need to throw morals out like Section 31 was originally intended in order for us to survive, that gains sway and all of Tyler's stuff is lost. But that's thinking a little bit too far ahead, probably. So anyway, my favorite line in this episode was Detmer. She says, it only takes one person to save another. And I was like, wow, that's all of coaching and transformation summarized in one sentence. I mean, it's so important. It's so valuable. And, Burnham and her mother. Well, anyway, go ahead. Does anybody have some thoughts on that?
I really liked Georgiou's line to Burnham about her self-sacrificing nature.
Yeah, that there's something wrong with it.
Well, what she said is that it allows you to, basically what she said is it allows you to, people can take advantage of it, other than just me, is what she says.
Yeah, it was a thing about all that. I liked seeing Georgiou in this episode. I liked the experience of her, making snarky, terrible comments, and then the way that everybody very quickly responded that it was a terrible idea for them to just blow up a supernova. She was like, no, that's a bad idea. That's a very bad idea. Georgiou is just not even trying to hide anymore. And then And then her telling Pike that she's from the mirror universe. I mean, like, what?
What mirror universe?
Yeah. I mean, he must have done his own research at some point. He must have been like, I'm not waiting for Burnham to tell me. I need to deal this. I need to make this woman into a known quantity and make sure that things don't get messed up.
Why did she tell him?
I don't know.
I think he already knew. Hence the wink.
Know.
She just wanted to have a little moment with him as he was getting beamed out?
She just wanted to have fun.
Okay. Just trying to introduce some chaos.
Reminds me of the Joker a little bit, actually.
It's just anarchy.
I also like her comment, a galactic rubber band with a martyr complex. Great description of Burnham, or anyone, ever. So, shall we talk about this AI?
Was there much new information about the AI in this episode?
Not directly, but when taken with the episode, the short trek, there was a good amount of stuff.
The fact that Discovery sort of became a organism that's defending itself.
Exactly.
And presumably developed the AI woman that we see in Calypso.
Yeah, there's so much. Like, I mean, clearly this AI is developing, and clearly this AI has a consciousness of the importance of that data.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yeah, pending more information, I'd say. Like, what are its intentions? Did this AI, that I guess was some like emergent property of the sphere data, does it just come out good in intention, or does it have to go through a phase of not really knowing what's good and what's evil?
Well, so this is what I think would be brilliant if it were one of the themes of the series for the next season is the long-standing growth and development of this AI under the watchful care of and engagement with the Discovery crew, stuck in the future.
Interesting. So they have to teach it. They have to teach it.
Yeah, they have to teach it and nurture it and all of that. And in fact, you know how that theme runs through every series where somebody discovers what it means to be human, right? Mm-hmm. The AI is that. And this little episode where it shows Croft, whatever. She's got a like Australian accent. It's not clear where she got that, or the name Zora. Those must have been things that she gave herself in the process of evolving herself over many hundreds of years, which is also a fascinating thing. Like, even if the last 2 or 3 episodes were just some really artistic, vibrant, interesting depiction of what the life of the AI that is Discovery is after all the crew leave and somehow go back in time, like, that would be interesting. That would be weird sci-fi. I would watch that. So, anyway.
I'd watch it. I don't know if CBS would publish it.
Well, yeah, I don't think so at all. But so there's a lot to say about this. I mean, Zora was ordered to remain in position. She says that in the episode, ostensibly by the crew, in order to keep the sphere data safe. And one reviewer very wisely noted that everything that happens in the episode only happens because the sphere data allows it to. Because the sphere data basically has control over the ship anyway. So, and in Calypso, she says it's been 1,000 years since the crew left her there. However, as I said earlier, with time travel, we assume that it's in the far future, but we can't be sure when it was. And we do know that there has to pass some time because there's these little eye portals in each aspect of the ship where the little vocalizations come through and the visual recording of the environment. They need to get installed.
9,000 ports.
Yeah, those need to get installed sometime. And so, she's a little manipulative because she selectively holds back answers to Craft's questions until she deems it long enough that his family's been waiting for him, and she makes armor and gives him access to the shuttle. But at the same time, she really deeply empathizes with and understands him and respects his needs, and ends up becoming the one to teach him to be human again. And she's got just such an intense sensitivity to him. And in fact, so much so, I think this is brilliant. So I was rewatching it, and I was like, how is it that she is able to understand exactly what sounds he wants to have played over the intercom to remind him of home? And then I thought to myself, what if she has sensors that can read what his brain patterns are and translate those into sounds? Like that would explain the radical precision with which he appreciated the sounds that she then made. So she reproduced his experience, and like the whole question underneath this is, what makes an artificial intelligence good or evil? Is it simple obedience, simple adherence to our values? Is it a process of self-discovery, yielding its own sense of self-preservation and its own sense of self-creation? And that seems to be what happens here. And then what makes this different from control? Well, I mean, maybe the paradox is that control is killing everybody in its way to get access to the data, but the data itself would make any AI ultimately good. And so its mission is half-assed, half-baked, and incomplete and imperfect because it doesn't have access to the full data. And once it does have access to the full data, then it would become a good AI and would stop killing and doing all these things that it's doing. Like maybe it just thinks it's gonna. Well, go ahead.
Yeah. So in that case, how do we get to the future where it's wiped out all life? Is that a future where it doesn't get the data?
Oh, they send the ship to the future, and in doing so, control doesn't get access to the data, and therefore wipes out all life just looking for it.
So maybe they're actually bringing about the future they're trying to prevent.
Right.
And the best thing to do would be to surrender to fate. Let control eat the data.
Yeah, that delicious data.
So, yeah, I mean, there's this other piece to that episode, the irony of Calypso. So let's transition into Calypso, I guess. Calypso really made me feel empathy for the AI itself, for Zora. Like, you know, over 18 minutes, I'm made to want the highest good and happiness and love for this creature, this program, even though she's not a real person. And the question then becomes, can we be tricked into believing something's a real person with ethical weight just because we feel things for it? Probably. I mean, this is the way Data and other characters like the Doctor and all of this throughout Star Trek have gone. So, yeah, that's my thinking. I mean, I love that other episode. That other episode also has these twin sort of paradoxical questions, is that an artificial superintelligence, you see, like the Doctor and Voyager, has this ability to continually transform and evolve and upgrade itself and become far more than its programming. And yet, they consign this AI to stew in its own existence forever. It's dealing only with a limited amount of data. And maybe its obsession with human love is because that's what they taught it before they left. And, I mean, it also seems kind of cruel and unusual punishment for an AI like that to consign it to just guarding data, or guarding itself, really, at that point. It is the data, evolved and integrated into the hardware of the Discovery. This evoked Ronnie from Andromeda, which was another of Gene Roddenberry's sci-fi shows, which was maybe badly executed about 10 to 15 years ago, but was sort of entertaining. So the other question that remains for this, and I've got a lot of comments on both episodes still, but the other question is, she simulates Craft at the end of Calypso. She's fallen in love with Craft. And so you see in the end of the episode, her digital avatar is dancing with Craft. And the question then becomes, like, if there's no real strong difference between a robust simulation of a being with a personality and that person themselves, especially in the eyes of, so to speak, an AI, like, is number one, is that ethical? Like, can you actually fully and completely simulate another person and go off and live a life with that simulated other person without violating their identity? And however, what if that person, you'd never see them again and there's little to no impact in their actual life? Like, is that good? So
like, if you could copy someone's consciousness and then that copy would have all the same memories. And it would be like
memories, behavior patterns, response patterns.
Yeah, it would be a continuous, like, it would be like you're constantly resurrecting someone without their consent, presumably, and putting them into, you could imagine you just, like, try out, like, imagine you're an AI that's in a ship, you're going to be there a long time, you can have a couple lifetimes worth of, fulfilling relationships and just try it out different ways. Try it out a whole bunch of different ways. See which way works the best.
Well, I don't think it's in the nature of the AI that Zora is to interfere in the expression of that model of that personality or to intervene in it. Like, I think she wanted a more or less faithful, well, maybe she did actually. She had to, never mind. She had to create a version that was more interested in fulfilling her desires than not, because he ends up dancing with her and staying. And the real one left, had to leave, was granted the ability to leave. So, yeah, you're right. Simulation is more for her benefit. But then, maybe she'll go insane. So this is another dilemma that's kind of faced by the guy from Jurassic World in the movie Passengers. Have either of you guys seen that?
No.
It's so good. So this guy, he's on a 120-year trip with about 5,000 other people on a luxury colony liner, and he's alone. Like, he wakes up because of some technical malfunction, and the crew is asleep. The crew's like 250 people, and all of the passengers are all asleep, and he's alone with a robot bartender and nothing but this vast, like, resort hotel space to play in. And he eventually gets really depressed and suicidal because he's alone and there's no connection. There's nothing there for him. And the great central ethical dilemma of the movie that some reviewers interpret as, like, just murder and violation, and then others see it as the beginning of the blossom of the romance that is the centerpiece of the film, is when he chooses to, without her consent, which she couldn't have, right, because she's unconscious, wake up this beautiful woman from suspended animation, and in order that he not be alone, and in order that he not go insane and not kill himself, and that, like, sort of, that it's worth it to include someone else in his misery or in the life that he has to suffer through alone, because he'll never get to the planet. Like, he'll die long before the ship actually ceases its travel. And so will whoever, is with him. And so the question is it right or wrong for him to wake this woman up? And he does, and they fall in love, and then the robot lets slip that he did this intentionally, and she absolutely despises him, and then they have to save the ship together. And it's a good movie. It's a really good movie. But they end up together, and some of the reviewers are like, this is just Stockholm Syndrome. Like, she fell in love with her captor, and this is horrific. And so the same kind of dynamic shows up here where Zora is actually creating a simulation. So it's a little different because it's not the actual thing, but there are bits of that where she at first saves Kraft and, like, brings him into the ship to take care of him, and that's great. And she selectively leaves out little bits of information like, oh, here's the way to the shuttle bay, and I can let you go at a whim. Like, she has to make that decision. But is it? I mean, it's kind of it's borderline nefarious, and it's very clever writing because, like, the AI is actually operating in a similar way to HAL 9000, the traditional, scary, horrific AI, but it's doing so within a context of generally being loving and compassionate and generous and sweet, to this character, to this human character, which stands in for us. So, that's something interesting, that whole dynamic. What do you guys think?
Have you ever heard of this book by this guy named Robin Hanson called Age of M?
No, what's that?
So it's very similar. It's like it's about it's a nonfiction book. It's this guy's projection of what he thinks reality is going to be like in 50 years or something. And it's about this economy of simulated consciousnesses. And he has ideas that like the way AI and computers are going to go in the future is that we're going to take people who are really good at tasks and simulate them inside machines, and you can simulate them so that like they can do 1,000 years worth of work in like 5 seconds of computer time. And it gets into like the social, implications. Like what if you have, like your lover and you can simulate your lover there. This sounds very similar to the kind of stuff you're describing.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'd love to check that out. This AI is really noble. This AI has kind of the nobility of Saru or Burnham.
Yeah,
right?
I wonder where it learned it. Maybe the next season is going to be like, how do you teach an AI to be noble and ethical with Michael Burnham and Saru? And they haven't even decided who's going to be the captain yet. So
that was funny. That was like, a
big fight about who gets to be the captain.
Maybe they share the captaincy.
Like the consoles in Rome, 2 consoles?
Yes, and this is the origin of the 2-seater, which we see in Voyager.
Oh.
That's a half joke.
I did always wonder about that 2-seater.
Yeah, what about the 3-seater?
From the Enterprise D? Yeah.
Oh. In the 3-seater, there's clearly one distinguished chair, which is the captain.
You're the captain, sir. You're entitled.
But the weird thing in Voyager is, like the captain and the chair for the captain and the chair for the first officer, you couldn't tell which is which. They're like, it's really like 2 equal ones.
Yeah. In conclusion, I'd like to say I like this episode. I mean, it was build up. It wasn't like the conclusion. I'm glad that it happened the way that it did. I hope there's more to it in the next episode. I give it a 9.99999.
Nice.
5.
What do you think about those evacuation bridges?
What's that?
What do you think about those evacuation bridges from Discovery to the Enterprise?
Oh, those were cool. I like those. I mean, It was kind of sad because they ended up being useless. Because I don't know if the whole crew went back. It looks like just the bridge crew ended up back on Discovery.
I think it was just the bridge crew. Pretty big ask to make everyone go back.
Yeah, I mean they've just gotten situated in their hotel rooms on the Enterprise.
I mean not everyone on the ship has that emotional relationship with Michael Burnham, right?
Yeah, no one's there who doesn't.
I mean, it brings us back to the old question of what are all those people on these starships doing if they're not actually necessary?
They can run it just based on. Well, it's going to be very similar to the way that it was in Andromeda, where there, if something broke down, it was serious because there's only so many people on the ship, and yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot they can do to show that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
The ship automatized, or very largely automatized.
Skeleton crew. I mean, they'll have that AI that'll be increasingly capable of automating things.
Exactly.
There's probably going to be a bunch of wacky hijinks where it's not doing the right thing and they have to teach it. And there might be a hilarious part where the AI gets annoyed with someone and blows them out the airlock, and then they have to say, no, no, no. It's not the kind of
Hijinks. Hijinks.
That's right. Training the AI to be ethical. It's going to make a lot of mistakes.
We have to beam Spock up, back on to the ship from space again.
We need Spock. We need Spock quick.
I think it would have learned the first
going
time.
with them.
Yeah, you know what, Richard? I don't think we're going to get the. I don't think we're going to get that conversation between Spock and the computer.
Oh no! Yeah, you're right. We've been looking forward to that.
Yeah.
It could still happen. It could still happen. They still have to defeat Control, right?
Yeah.
Spock will go up and say this sentence is false. And then we'll see, it's like the Control will have control of someone's body, right? And so Spock will say this sentence is false. And then we'll see the person's actual forehead cave in as their mind is imploding. That's what I'm hoping for.
What?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
That's
what I'm hoping for.
I mean, maybe.
All right, my rating's a 9.
All right, well, Tyler.
Okay.
A lot of pressure.
Well, if it were nacho cheese, I would say it would have a lot of cayenne pepper in it.
But it is my cheese.
So there is a degree of enjoyability to be had.
You know, maybe it's not Joe cheese, but it's my cheese.
Well, nachos by nature are nachos.
No, you got to stop telling me it's not my cheese. It's definitely my cheese.
Well, I paid for it, so.
It's not Joe cheese.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. This was terrible. I shouldn't have tried this.
Yeah, you shouldn't have.
It's okay.
It's a lot of cayenne pepper.
It's okay. It's okay.
We can always
Hijinks.
recover. Hijinks. Yeah, this is more hijinks. This is
low jinx.
Can you imagine? I mean, like, it would be like having data. Oh man, there's so much they can do. It's like the ship is data.
Or it's like
really
the ship is the ship in that episode of Next Generation where it starts to become conscious, and then afterwards they're just kind of like whatever.
That's right. Here, huge potential, like Federation changing information they receive because the ship is becoming an AI, and then it's like, oh yeah, whatever. It's like Kirk stealing that device.
So that's the other interesting thing. That's the other distinction for Discovery, I think, when they go into the future, is that, Voyager at least had a place that it was trying to get back to, but they shouldn't. I mean, I guess themselves, they're persons, they can allow themselves to want to travel back in time. To the 23rd century, but the ship itself can't go with them. And I mean, I'd be really kind of bored if they had a whole season of just like, all right, well, how do we get back in time? Well, remember that time we used the spore drive to travel forward in time? Maybe we could use it to travel back in time. Okay,
God damn it.
Wormhole, or look for some tachyons, or look for a transwarp network.
Ooh, tachyons, that's good. Yeah.
Maybe send a message to what do you call it? The time fleet. The time fleet, the 29th century people.
I think they're going to be jumping ahead of them. I think they're going to be beyond the USS Relativity and crew.
You know, maybe
That's true. They will be.
I don't know, but and they'll be a couple centuries past where Daniels was, too. So
yeah. It's like how the writers got themselves out of doing a prequel. They were like, they started writing a prequel, and they're like, oh, there's so many canon issues. It's so difficult. How can we get them into the future?
Shove them there.
It's not a prequel anymore.
Shove them there.
Well, then they can continue doing their production design.
Yeah, then they don't have to worry about all this stuff anymore.
Yeah. And then they can retcon it by saying that Discovery going back before the Federation started using these uniforms and showed them, what's going on. They'd be like, oh, cool, we'll do them this way. And then Control, and then they'll be like, but, it's an AI. We should go back to the old stuff. That looked a lot better. I don't know. There's some dumb possibilities we could explore.
Well, I think that concludes the episode. The only thing that I think there really is to say is, why would somebody put a man in a time suit and then shoot them out of a wormhole? Basically, what I think the point of Discovery is to really ask and answer and seriously wrestle with the question, why would someone shoot a man?
Good Lord.
Before throwing him out of the plane?
Oh, my stomach.